welcome you back to Psych 265 fully online. And today I'm going to be talking about how to write the discussion section. So the first thing we need to do before we write the discussion section is walk through the results. So if we go into assignments, you'll see that the results section has been posted. And so I have written the results section for you. All you have to do for the final paper is copy and paste it. So the results section is the section with statistics in it, and that's maybe a little bit too much right now for you as undergraduates, because a lot of people haven't had statistics yet. So I've handled that for you. So that's something that you can just copy and paste into the final paper. It goes right after the method section, right? So you have your title, then you have your abstract, then you have your introduction, then you have your method, right? Then you have your results. So results follow the method section and go right before the discussion section. So all you have to do is copy and paste. It's in a Microsoft Word document. You just copy and paste it, put it into your final paper, and you're done. Now we need to understand the results section to write the discussion section though. So let's take a look at this first. So here's the results section. The first hypothesis was that it was supported in that a positive correlation was found between empathy and the belief in the effectiveness in COVID vaccine boosters. So hypothesis 1, supported. There's your correlation. R is 0.395. Now, this is P is 0.063. This is, I guess you could say, not, totally statistically significant if you use the 0.05 marker or the 0.05 threshold, but this is trending towards significance. And the reason why it's not significant is because the sample size is small. There's only 24 people that did the survey this semester. And so I'm calling this significant because it would be significant with a bigger sample. And 0.395 is pretty large. Not as far as correlations go, it's still kind of a moderate correlation, but it's definitely going to be significantly different from 0. So that's kind of what statistical significance means. It means, is this result significantly different from 0? That means this is not a result by chance. So in the population, the correlation is not 0. And I would say, yes, this is, even though it's trending, 0.063, it's very close and close enough. With a larger sample, this would be fine. So the first hypothesis is supported. There was a positive correlation between empathy and the belief in the effectiveness of COVID vaccine boosters. So if you're high in empathy, you also believe that the booster is effective and you take it. Right? Empathy means you have, you can put yourself in another person's position. You can take another person's perspective. So that makes sense. You think about people that are possibly vulnerable, could get sick, could die. You take the booster to protect them, especially if you're high in empathy. So that was supported. The second hypothesis was not supported in that there was no significant difference in empathy between those planning to get the COVID booster and those not getting the booster. So that wasn't even close to being significant. 0.617, not even close. So that basically means that between those getting the booster and those not getting the booster, there was no difference in empathy. So it wasn't like if you were high in empathy, you automatically got the booster. You could be high in empathy and get the booster. You can be high in empathy and not get the booster. That's a little bit different than thinking the booster is effective. Most people high in empathy thought the booster was effective, but of all those high in empathy, there wasn't a massive difference in those who actually got the booster shot themselves. The third hypothesis was supported in that there was a positive correlation between health anxiety and fear of side effects of the COVID vaccine boosters. So this is once again trending towards significance. It's very close. The positive correlation between health anxiety. So if you're high in health anxiety, you're kind of afraid of the side effects of the booster or the vaccine. So you probably are not going to get it. The fourth hypothesis was also supported as there was a negative correlation between alexithymia and the belief in the effectiveness of the vaccine booster. So if you're high in alexithymia, that means you have trouble identifying and labeling emotions. Right? If you're high in alexithymia, then you're low in the belief of the vaccine and the boosters. Right? So if you're having trouble understanding your emotions, then you're probably going to be low on empathy too, and you're probably not going to think much about the vaccine being effective. Is that important? Well, a lot of times people just can't grasp their emotions. And those people that can't grasp their emotions are not running out to get the vaccine. They're not saying, wow, the vaccine is great. They're kind of feeling indifferent about the vaccine, or maybe even negatively about the vaccine. So those who have trouble identifying their emotions tend to also have trouble with empathy, and they're not thinking about the effectiveness of the vaccine. The fifth hypothesis had mixed results, as there was no positive correlation between attachment anxiety and the desire of family friends to be vaccinated. Excuse me for a second. Got a little bit of this lingering cold. Attachment anxiety. So people high on attachment anxiety, they're afraid of losing other people. They're clingy. They don't want they don't want other people to leave them. They don't want their loved ones to leave them. Right. So you would think that those people that are high in attachment anxiety really want their family and friends to be vaccinated. That wasn't necessarily the case here. There really was no relationship. So that didn't work out as we thought it would work out. However, attachment avoidance was negatively correlated with the desire of family and friends to be vaccinated. So if you're high in attachment avoidance, you kind of want to be independent. You kind of are okay by yourself. You're not clinging to anybody. You're comfortable with independence. You kind of like want to be on your own, even in an unhealthy way. So these people that are high in avoidance, this was negatively correlated. So people high in avoidance correlated with the desire of family and friends to be vaccinated. So the more you are avoidant, right, higher avoidance gives you lower desire of family and friends to be vaccinated because it's a negative correlation. So what does that mean? I mean, I could interpret that in a very, I guess, a really not positive way, in saying that these people that kind of desire to be left alone, they kind of don't want their family and friends to be vaccinated. I'm not going to say they want them dead per se, or to be sick, or to have trouble, but I think more that they just really don't care. It's kind of like, leave me alone. Or maybe they're tired of their family and friends telling them to be vaccinated, and they kind of just, don't get vaccinated. Or maybe, this would be even more interesting, these people that are high in avoidance, they kind of don't want their family and friends to be vaccinated, so that they have that as an excuse. Like, okay, I'm not going to see you. I'm not going to hang out with you. I'm not going to see you on the holidays. I'm not going to be with you at any point because you're not vaccinated, and maybe I don't want to make you sick, or I don't want to get sick, or, so I'll just kind of be on my own. So it's kind of a built-in excuse for being on your own if you're high in attachment avoidance. That's a really cynical view of this, but, unless we ask them in follow-up questions or interviews exactly why would you want these people not to be vaccinated, we don't know. We can think about it, and we can speculate that maybe that's the case. Maybe it's the fact that they want to be alone, and if their family and friends are not vaccinated, that's a reason to not be with them. Because I could say, hey, you're not vaccinated, I'm not feeling well or whatnot, so let's not hang out. Let's not see each other. Let's keep our space. And if you can think about the pandemic in general, these kind of people probably thrived during the pandemic. We like to think of the pandemic as, and everyone's tired of the pandemic. I understand. Everyone wants it. It's over. Why are we talking about it? Well, we're talking about it because it established the dynamic that we haven't really experienced before. And most of us were miserable during the pandemic because we couldn't do anything. However, there were some people that thrived during the pandemic because they couldn't go out. They didn't have to see anybody. They didn't have to do anything they didn't want to do. They kind of wanted to be left alone, and the pandemic was an opportunity for them to be left alone. And these people high on attachment avoidance, they don't need this connection with other people. They don't need these relationships. They don't need the close bond. They kind of thrive just isolated. And those people probably love the pandemic because, look, I don't have to see you. I don't have to see people I don't want to see. I'm kind of good on my own. Maybe I don't want to go out. I don't want to be the life of the party. I'm just going to be sitting at home or being on my own somewhere, and I'm happy with that. And so those are the types of people that kind of thrive during the pandemic. Or maybe that's their lifestyle. And, people asking them to hang out and do things with them, and just it's too much for them. So they were just like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm by myself, alone. And I'm happy like this, and just leave me alone. So that's what we could be having when we look at this attachment avoidance and the desire to see family and friends vaccinated here. So we have a bunch of interesting findings here, and we need to talk about them during the discussion. So this, you're just copying and pasting the results. You don't have to do anything other than that. I'll leave this open because we're going to be talking about this when we write the discussion section. For the discussion section, let's take a look. I want 4 paragraphs. I want the title discussion centered, non-bold, non-italics. Paragraph 1. Restate the hypotheses in words. Well, a lot of this was given to you when I wrote the results section. So tell me, are the 5 hypotheses supported? So hypothesis 1. Hypothesis 1 was supported, and it's there. I told you exactly what happened. So basically, you're just going to rephrase this to talk about the results of the 5 hypotheses in plain words without the statistics. That's all that's going in paragraph 1. So reframe this or summarize the results without the statistics. Give me the rundown of the 5 hypotheses. Was hypothesis 1 supported? Hypothesis 1 was supported, and we found this. So as you can see, I wrote a lot of this out for you in the results, so you can use a lot of what I've written here, minus the statistics, to write one solid paragraph about all 5 hypotheses. So that's all I want in paragraph 1. Hypothesis 1 was supported. What happened? Hypothesis 2, was it supported? What happened? Hypothesis 3, was it supported? What happened? And you're just basically stating this. It's a summary of the results, minus the statistics. That's all I'm asking for in paragraph 1. Very easy. Paragraph 2, how do your findings relate to past research, especially the research discussed in the introduction? So hypothesis 1, what did we find? Let's look at the results. We found a positive correlation between empathy and the belief in the effectiveness of the booster or the vaccine, right? That's what we found. How does that relate to previous research? What did previous research find? So here in paragraph 2, you want to go back into the literature and find studies, that talk about these hypotheses. What did they find in the previous literature? So a lot of this was probably in your introduction section. Some of it may not, but you should have a lot of it, because remember, in the introduction, you were supposed to have 5 studies, 1 for each of the 5 hypotheses. Go back to those studies and basically say, what did they find? What did they find about empathy and effectiveness of COVID-19 boosters? And tell me what they find, and cite it. You must cite in paragraph 2 these previous studies. So remember, author, year. Paraphrase and then cite author, year. So go find that article that you may have written about in the introduction, right? About the past research between empathy and COVID vaccines or COVID boosters. Were your results similar or different from previous research? So, did we find something similar to what the previous study that you researched for the introduction found? Did that previous study talk about a positive correlation? Did they find that positive correlation? If so, say yes. That the current study's positive correlation between empathy and effectiveness of the COVID-19 booster shots supported the previous research by so-and-so, cite it, put so-and-so authors, parentheses, date or year, right? And just tell me that. For those 5 hypotheses, tell me, do those previous studies relate to the research that we have here, the results that we have here? Are they similar or are they different? That's all. So you should be citing 5 studies. And if they're the same studies that you put in the introduction, that's fine. So that was the goal, right? To find previous research on this. So all I'm doing is tying it back to that introduction and saying, look, we found this correlation. This was similar to what was found by so-and-so, the article I might have talked about in the introduction section. Or it was different. You don't have to talk about why it's different. Just tell me, is it similar or different to each of the 5 hypotheses? That's paragraph 2. Paragraph 3 is now about the why. So if you failed to support your hypothesis, so you have 5 hypotheses. If you failed to support any of them, and we have, if you go to our results, we failed to support certain hypotheses, right? Especially the second hypothesis here, right? And the 5th hypothesis, there was some failing to support. So when you fail to support your hypotheses, you need a reason why. Give a reason why. So why did we not support the hypothesis with empathy and vaccinations? And a lot of these explanations about why are tied up into what are called the limitations of the study. So what are these limitations of the study? Low sample size. That's a big one. Lack of diversity in the sample. The sample is predominantly from New York City. A lack of diversity in terms of gender. The sample was overwhelmingly female. Right? How about age ranges? The sample was predominantly young, in the late teens, early 20s range. These are some of the limitations of the study. Small sample. Everybody's from New York City. Right? So geographical limitations. People in New York City think differently about COVID than people around the world. They do. Gender. Do females think differently about COVID and other diseases than men do? Possibly. Our sample is predominantly female. Our sample was fairly diverse, in terms of ethnicity, which is always good. But age range was very limited, mostly young sample. It's a lot different than if I did this study in senior citizens. It would be a lot different, right? It would be a hell of a lot different. First off, senior citizens mostly would be much more concerned with COVID. Not at this point per se, but overall in terms of the path, the sort of the lethality, the mortality rate amongst younger people. It's kind of, it was COVID, whatever. It wasn't a big deal. I'm glad it's over. It was overhyped. People kept talking about it. I'm sick of it. But amongst the older population, it was a much bigger deal because they saw many more people die. So many of their friends got sick and died versus, say, a 20-year-old. Most of the friends of 20-year-old people didn't get very sick and didn't die. But if you talk to 60, 70, 80-year-olds, a great deal of their friends and family have died. So the age range plays a big role in terms of the impact of the study and the conclusions. So those are all limitations. No one's going to mistake a sample from BMCC as being representative of the entire population, because it's not. And the reason is the limitations are just talked about. And also internal, external validity. You want to give a statement on internal and external validity. Internal validity is the ability to draw cause and effect conclusions. Now, with this kind of study, it's all survey, so it's mostly correlational. And we can't draw cause and effect conclusions with a survey because it's correlational data. So the internal validity is limited. External validity is the ability to draw conclusions or to extrapolate from the sample to the population. How well can we take the results from BMCC and extrapolate them to the general population? The answer is not very well. We're limited. Because BMCC is not representative, or BMCC students are not representative of the entire population. So therefore, there is some limited external validity here. Is it a good starting point to get data on students? Yes. It's important to get data with a diverse, range of samples. And so getting data among college students is important, but it's not the end-all, be-all. It is one of many stages of data gathering that needs to take place. So there is some limited external validity because BMCC may not represent the entire population. Although, with New York City being the primary epicenter at the start of the COVID pandemic, you can get good data out of here, out of New York City. There is a lot of trauma from COVID in New York City. So the data is good, it's just not perfect. And obviously our sample is way too small. 20-something people, 24 people. It's not enough. So that's paragraph 3. Paragraph 4, what are the real-world implications of the results of the study? What does this study tell us? Well, it's only a small study. And, does it tell us anything? Well, I think it does. I think we see here the relationship between empathy and the effectiveness of the booster shot. That's important. So people with empathy think more highly or take more seriously these pushes for vaccination. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say, everyone has to get vaccinated. No, this is an independent decision. People are allowed to make their own decision, right? I do believe that, when you have a serious illness and you have a way of treating it or preventing it, that it's very helpful for the entire population for people to get vaccinated. But, that's a very personal decision, vaccination. So I understand resistance towards it. There's a lot of paranoia. There's a lot of conspiracy theories, anti-vaxxing stuff. People are allowed to believe what they want to believe, but if this was a very serious illness, like the mortality rate being much higher than what it is, we'd have many, many more people dead. We'd have millions and millions of people dead with the attitude, the sort of laissez-faire, on not caring attitude that a lot of people had in this country. So I think it's really important that if we can turn empathy up, if we can increase empathy in our population, then maybe people will be more likely to follow these guidelines. Is there a way to do that? Well, there's many ways to try to increase empathy in the population. Doesn't mean it's going to be effective, but there are options for that. There are possibilities. In terms of attachment avoidance and attachment anxiety, is that important? Yeah. It's very important. Because attachment avoidance is leading to lack of caring about people getting vaccinated and isolation, and that's very unhealthy. There's also a link between health anxiety and getting vaccinated. Can we decrease health anxiety? Can we teach people the importance of vaccination and get them not to be afraid of things? Because there's a lot of fear-mongering out there with the anti-vax folks. And once again, it's your decision. You can do what you want to do, but decisions should be made on quality information. And a lot of the anti-vax conspiracy theories, they're just stuff people are making up. I don't know where that information is coming from. There's no data to support it. So, the purpose of the sort of anti-vax propaganda is to make people afraid. And I'm not saying anti-vax people are bad people. They're not. I mean, I know professionals, people that are healthcare workers that are anti-vax. They believe in natural immunity. And that's fine. And they have their opinion on these things. But that gets sort of put in with all the other conspiracy theories about anti-vax. And, if you have data to support your view, that's fine. But if you're just going to go based on conspiracy theories, the government's going to control you. If they vaccinate you, they're going to put a chip into your body and they're going to control you. I mean, if you really believe this, you're never going to get vaccinated. And if enough people believe that, it's going to be a problem. So if there's a more lethal pandemic down the line, these people are not going to get vaccinated. And they're going to be at high risk. They may get sick. They may die. They may pass it along. They may kill other people. So for COVID, we're talking about a 1% or less than 1% mortality rate. But if this was smallpox, if this was something much more contagious and much more lethal, we'd have millions and millions of people dying. If this was chemical warfare and we could vaccinate people against chemical warfare, and people said no, I don't trust the government, and then we get hit by some chemical bomb or some chemical plague strikes us, a large chunk of our population is going to die from it. So there's a lot of importance in sort of doing this research or thinking about this question. Even if we're done with the pandemic, we're never really done with it. It's going to happen again in some form. And that's not me being a fearmonger, that's me being realistic. This is not going to be a once in 100-year event again. There are too many things out there happening that make this pandemic or this problem likely to pop up in the future in less than 100 years. In the near future. So that's kind of why it's important. And then how would you take care of the limitations of the study? Well, very easily. Get more people, increase sample size, increase diversity of the sample in terms of gender, in terms of age. Maybe collect the sample from multiple places outside of New York City, so you're not just New York City centric. There are a lot of ways to improve the study if we're doing it in the future, and that's what you want to talk about. So once again, 4 paragraphs, double spaced, 1-inch margins, and put discussion on the top. Make sure you review the results like I just did, and then you're going to save it as a PDF and upload it, and I will put the link to upload on Blackboard. And if you have any questions about it, let me know. But if not, I look forward to reading them. It's not easy to write the discussion. It's going to be a lot harder than the method section, and there were some screw-ups on the method section which shouldn't have happened. Right? The method section was a give me 10 free 10 points, and some people wrote the method section about a completely different study. Like they read a study somewhere and they wrote the method section about that study instead of writing the method section about the class study, the survey that we've been talking about all semester. So, even when you think things are straightforward, they're not always straightforward. But this is going to require more work. I guess similar work to the introduction, maybe not as much research on it, but I expect a well-written discussion section. And if you have any questions, let me know. If not, I look forward to reading them, and I'll see you next time for the title, abstract, and the references.